Um, Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina, and my guest today is Natalie from Knitty Natty podcast. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, everyone.
So you have a few actual two different podcasts or a bunch of different
Well,
podcasts.
I have a bunch of different things that are Knitty Natty, and then I have like a whole separate world that is this and that. So I've got two different YouTube channels, but just one that's focused around knitting and crochet.
Which one did you start first with?
Oh, I started Knitty Natty first uh, I started my Instagram in 2017, like August of 2017, and then I started posting on YouTube in December of 2018.
So let's go to that time. I saw when you started posting, it was every single day in December of 2018.
Yes.
How did you come up with that idea? Like, why every day?
Well, I was doing something that I'd seen a lot of people do. So it was not my original idea, but I started out with Vlogmas, which is where you just kind of record what you're doing every day, which involves, knitting and, an advent calendar, my yarn advent calendar. And so I thought this would be a good way to like start on YouTube, just having a bunch of videos ready to go. It was kind of like a low pressure situation where like, okay, I'm not starting out with a podcast. I'm just getting all of these videos up. Let's see how it does. So I just wanted to start out with the Vlogmas. And then I actually hadn't really planned to start doing a podcast. That idea kind of came later on.
So, how was the like initial months received by your followers? Like, was it immediately you got a lot of subscribers and people reaching out to you, or was it like talking to yourself sort of thing?
Um, it was like the first month was pretty, I guess compared to now, it's that's the thing is it's all like very relative.
Right.
I was really excited with the response. I think I had like maybe 1 to 200 people watching those videos that came out every single day. And so I just kept imagining that as if all of those people physically were watching me like in an audience like live, that's amazing. That's a ton of people. So I was actually really exciting. I was excited. I was celebrating all of that. I mean, compared to where I am now, like I've had a ton of growth that's also very exciting. But that first month was, I guess you could say, relatively low, but I was still excited about it. And then the next month in January of 2019 is when I started to podcast, which is just like a weekly video. It's not really a podcast, but a weekly video on my knitting and crochet projects. And I got really lucky because somebody that I was familiar with, Diane of Suburban Stitchers, she had seen my first episode. And so she talked about it on her podcast. And so overnight, I had a bunch of new subscribers, which was really such a blessing. Again, it was very lucky to have that. So I think I went from like maybe 200 to 500 like overnight.
Right.
And I woke up in the morning and I had all these notifications on my phone and I was like, oh gosh, something is wrong with YouTube. Like I have made a mistake or there's some spam going on. And that's when I kind of realized that Diane had talked about me. So I got that little burst kind of right away in my second month that was really, really helpful.
Do you find that a lot in like YouTube community? Because like all the YouTubers I've met so far, they are like that. They'll talk about you. They'll like discuss how like, oh, yeah, I've met this new podcaster and you guys should check it out. Like, is that your experience as well?
Well, it is my experience because that's what happened to me. Um, I really like that. Like I feel like the podcasting community or the knitting podcast community is very uh, welcoming and kind. Like there's room for new podcasters because everyone is an individual, everyone is different. So when I find somebody new, then I'm excited to share about it. And even in that moment when that was happening to me, like I was the one getting shared. to a bigger platform, I was like, you know what, one day I hope I'm able to do this, like that I will be big enough that I'm able to talk about somebody and send them a bunch of interested viewers and new subscribers. So I hope I think that's where I'm at now. That's not the end all be all, but it is exciting. I used to do a lot more collaborations kind of like this, and that is something that I would like to start doing again, because it's incredible to be able to share with everyone that's in YouTube.
Right.
It can be hard to find somebody, but once you find someone, you really click with them. It doesn't matter, how many subscribers they have, as long as you like them and enjoy them. So I've seen that a lot too.
Do you find, like, when you talk about the pattern that you need, and they're not all your patterns, like you need a lot of things from other people, do you feel that weight that you are the influencer, you are the one who's gonna make people wanna knit or not wanna knit certain project? Do you feel like it's your responsibility to, like, think what you're putting out there?
Yes, in a little, like, sort of. I don't think about that at first, but with everything that I'm selecting now, I'm a little more careful, because I do have a lot more eyes on me and what I'm choosing. And not because I want to look like a certain, like, good or bad, but because I want to make sure I'm representing a company as well, and I'm representing individuals well, which is a lot more important to me than the companies. I want to make sure that I'm using, like, products and knitting from designers that are inclusive, that are, mostly it's the inclusivity, really, with size and with just, like, all of the things that are going on. I try to be really careful when I'm representing different things. It's kind of fun to select something and see other people get excited about it. I think that's one of my favorite things to do, is just, like, create hype. Like, sometimes I'm like, I'm just like a knitting, like, your knitting BFF. Like, I'm just here to, like, hype you up about knitting and crochet and get you excited to do something. So I've learned a lot. And so now I'm just, like, even more careful in the products that I choose and who I choose to, like, partner up with as well.
Right. So I noticed at the end of 2018, you did this whole year in review and the plans for 2019. Is that how you, like, usually operate in your life? Do you plan for the whole year ahead? Do you keep yourself like, okay, I did this, and didn't finish that? Like, is that your life in general, like your approach to life in general?
I wish it was. I need to do more of that. I need to do more reflecting. So that specific idea, doing the year in review for knitting and crochet, is something that I got from Boston Jen. She is a great knitting podcaster. She has an audio podcast and hosts a ton of make-alongs. And you'll kind of see this theme. Like, I don't come up with, like, a ton of original ideas. I kind of see something that I like that other people are doing, and I always try to give them credit for that. But yeah, so Jen does this year in review, and I thought, that's really fun. I want to start doing that. And what I found is, when I looked back on all of my projects for the year, I could see a lot of themes, like what was bringing me comfort that year, what I was really interested in based on, like, how many socks or how many shawls or how many sweaters. And then originally I was making goals for the year. I'm not really doing that anymore. Like, I didn't put a lot of goals into 2021 as far as X number of these things, because I realized that this year's a huge transitional year for me. It's been very difficult in a lot of ways and very rewarding in a lot of ways. But I'm excited to review this year and look at my projects and see what they tell me. Like, see what they tell me about my stress levels for the year, my interests for the year. And I think it's a really good thing to stop and do that. I'm reading this book right now about productivity, and it talks about No, it's not from the book. I am reading a book on productivity, but this idea actually came from a class that I'm taking online that's also about productivity. But it was talking about the importance of a review day, to stop and review and look at everything once a week or once a month. And so while I don't do that with everything, mostly knitting, I would like to start doing that more with like other things in my life, all of the processes that go on.
So you had recently this episode where you were destashing already destashed shelf unit.
Oh, yes.
And I must tell you, I was watching it and my heart was just stopping every time you would take a skein and put it into like giveaway or whatever you were destashing pile. Did you get a lot of feedback like that? Like, why would you give away the yarn that you bought already? Like, couldn't you find something else to knit or crochet with it? Tell me, like, why did you decide that you needed to destash?
So this can definitely rub people the wrong way or make them feel really uncomfortable to get rid of items that are good items. But I think that's kind of like a fear that we have with getting rid of things, all kinds of things. So I'm not like a full-on minimalist. Like I'm not somebody who has like only exactly the number of things that I need for that moment. I wouldn't have probably any yarn except for the current project I'm working on if I did that. But I am edging towards minimalism. I used to have a lot more yarn, and there's kind of like a video series where I'm like decluttering, destashing, getting rid of more. And I still have plenty of yarn. Like I could not buy any more yarn for a year and I would still be fine. But I didn't get that many comments about like I didn't get any comments, I don't think, about like don't get rid of those things. And I did try to make it clear that I'm not throwing full skeins away. Like I took them, some of them I took to my school. I used to teach elementary school. And that was a really great way to get rid of partial skeins. I know not everyone has that option to give them to people that like kids or anything like that. And then to be honest, I just took some stuff to Goodwill and I don't feel guilty about that at all. So I think we have like a fear and like a guilt to get rid of items that we know we're not going to use. I feel like if you have a yarn that you're not excited about, it's not your color, it's not your fiber, or you tried it and you're like, I really don't enjoy this, you put it on yourself that you have to make something with it, and you don't. Like there's no rule that you have to make something with it. I personally feel like I should be responsible enough not to just throw something in the trash. Like that to me is not going to be okay, but still a personal decision. If you did decide, nope, not for me, and you just throw it away, that's totally okay. It's fine. But if you can get rid of it, maybe in a more responsible way by giving it to somebody else or just donating it, that's okay. And I find kind of like when I do get rid of something like that, whether it's yarn or something else, I feel like a weight lifted. I'm not walking by and looking at it. Like each time I see that item and I feel a little twinge of guilt, like, oh, I really should be making that into something. And this has been a practice. Like it took a long time to get there. That's why there's like 6 videos of me decluttering my yarn. But
well, now that you decluttered, right, for the 6th time, do you feel like when you're shopping for yarn, you are more in control, or is there still that girl that like, oh, pretty, let me get it inside there?
Okay, that is a really good point. I'm so glad you said that. So the whole point of like decluttering and getting rid of stash is so that it's not so that you can just do it again, keep the cycle going. Hopefully you're like, I know that I'm learning from the things that I'm looking at and going, you know what, I don't work with that, so I'm not going to get stuff like that anymore. Why didn't I like it? Oh, because maybe it's not a weight of yarn that I like to use. I'm pretty much just a fingering weight, sock weight kind of girl right now. I don't really stash anything else unless I'm buying for a sweater. But I've learned, like when I'm at the yarn store and I'm getting something, I'm like, okay, am I really honestly going to make something with this. And I've gotten a lot better about making my selections. My ultimate goal is to actually get down to where I have almost no stash. I do want to keep a couple of sock skeins just because that's always a project I can cast on, a fingering weight skein for like socks or a hat or something. But I like where I'm just in the moment. I'm choosing a project, I'm choosing the yarn that I like right now for this project and starting it. That's the ultimate place that I want to get to. But for now, I'm still doing some stashing because I'm going to all these new places here in New York City. And I'm just a lot better at picking things that I know I'm going to like, at least for the next couple of years.
So, okay, but like with the bigger YouTube channel and the bigger following on Instagram, I'm sure you know like a ton of indie dyers also.
Mm.
Do you ever feel like it's your responsibility to buy from indie dyers, to support the indie dyers, to buy small batch stores basically? And how do you deal with that guilt of not buying from everybody you like and know?
So I'm kind of in a unique position where I can support dyers without buying from them. And honestly, everyone can do that. So there's a lot of ways, like whether you just are trying not to stash, or maybe you're just trying to spend less money, whatever it is, or maybe you're just like, that yarn is not for you. You can like a yarn and it cannot be for you. So if I see something from a local dyer on Instagram, for example, that I love, but I know I'm probably not going to purchase, I can do several things to still support them. I can, you can just like and comment stuff, but what's a little better is if you share it. So because I do have a larger platform, if I see something that I like, I might share it to my story, and might be like, oh, I really love this. Like, I don't say like, go buy it, but then it kind of might introduce that dyer to other people. And that is a little bit of a unique position for me, but I feel like everyone can do that in their own like Instagram, is to just share and talk about different things. That I'm trying to think if there's like some other just like easy concrete ways to basically just share. But I don't really feel guilty about not making purchases. When I do need something, I really do try to go to the local shops here in New York City, or if I'm ordering online, I will order from a local shop and have it shipped to me, rather than just going to like a big box kind of a store. So I try to do that like as often as possible, so that, my values of supporting the shops are followed through.
Right. You also mentioned like numerous times throughout your episodes about Ravelry notes. So every time you do a project that you put like very detailed Ravelry notes. And that's probably like another way of supporting the dyers and supporting the designers, is to put those notes. Do you do that like on every project you make?
I try to. I try my best, and it's not just for like, it's for me, but it's also to help others. When you're on Ravelry and you're picking out a certain pattern, you can go to the projects and you can look at different people's projects and see what notes they have. And then for me, since I'm podcasting and I'm discussing those projects every single week, I'll link my specific page, and then I try my best to keep my notes in there. I had forgotten on a recent sweater that I did, and somebody messaged me and I was like, oh, darn. So I went and I took my knit companion stuff and I real quick put it in there and sent them a copy. And I was like, thank you so much for reminding me, because I do forget sometimes, but I like it because when I knit something, I don't always knit the same pattern, but sometimes I'll knit something with the same gauge or a similar shape, and I can go back and look at those notes for myself. But I do use other people's project notes, and I do hear sometimes from people that they have used the notes from my pattern to make adjustments for themselves. Especially socks, I try to keep track of like how many rows I did, how many stitches I cast on, and all of that there in the Ravelry notes. Every time I do a pair of socks, I try to do that.
And I also noticed that you often say, and I use this pattern and I made these adjustments, and I use this pattern, but do you do it like, do you find yourself often like alternating the patterns?
Yeah, pretty much all the time. So for socks, I do a lot of vanilla socks. It's pretty rare that I'm knitting a pattern sock, but when I do follow somebody else's pattern, almost always I will insert my preferred like lengths and heel and toe because I have them memorized. So I just throw those in. I like doing those. And then for sweaters, I have been learning so much about sweaters lately because I've knit a lot more this year than I have in the past. So kind of, you know, doing the same thing back to back while it's different patterns, I'm learning from that and how to make it fit my body. You know, we're knitting and crocheting garments. Like the best part about that is we can make them customized to fit us better than a store-bought sweater. So I have a couple of adjustments I usually make for my body. I usually make the armhole deeper, and I usually add some shaping from the bust down to the hips because my hip measurement is wider than my bust measurement. So a pattern that just is knit straight up and down is going to just like right up like a crop top on me. So I've been learning a lot about how to make those adjustments. And in my podcasts, I share about that, and I share like what's working and what's not, because I have done some things that are like a little overboard. So hopefully that is kind of like helping people just see that it's okay to mess around with a pattern. Like you don't have to just knit it as is, and that it's not super scary to do.
Is that how you got into designing your own patterns? Like you messing up with other people patterns, and then you came up with the like, why not do it for myself?
Yeah, a little bit. And before I really was like, okay, I'm going to publish designs, I was tweaking things because that's the best way to build confidence, is not start from scratch. It's just to kind of tweak things. And from there, the thing that helped me the most become a designer was to test other people's patterns. So to see things from the other side, if you will, like the consumer side, and looking at designs, that really helped me get into it. And then my first published design is a crochet pattern. It's called the float tote. And that came from a concept of like, this doesn't exist. Something that I need doesn't exist, and I want to create it. And so that's kind of where I really like kicked into gear. But before all of that, I really had been like putting into practice small tweaks to patterns and testing for others to kind of build my confidence in starting to design on my own.
What's your favorite things and least favorite things about test knitting for others?
Oh, I haven't tested in a long time. My favorite part is probably like the community and deadline aspect. I actually really like it when somebody tells me what to do. I like it when it's just like, okay, you have this deadline, and then I'll usually work it out for myself. Like, okay, if I want to reach X deadline, and these are the things I need to do in the pattern. I need to do this week 1, week 2, week 3. So I really like make-alongs and like challenges and stuff, like short bursts of intense knitting is something that really drives me. It doesn't work for everybody, but I really like that. And then a lot of a lot of test knits that I've been a part of have included some kind of community aspect, like a Instagram chat. And so that's really fun. It's kind of like, you know, you get to feel like you're a part of something important to make sure this pattern is really, really good when it goes to the public. What do I not like about it? I don't think there's anything really to dislike. I think it's really fun. The only part that's frustrating, this really hasn't happened to me as a test knitter, but as a designer, there's been some times that there is an error or something in the pattern that kind of has to stop people in their tracks. Like, okay, I can't move on until the designer looks at this, fixes this. And so as on the designer side, that's something that I think is is very challenging because you feel a lot of pressure, like, oh no, everyone's waiting on me to figure this out. But it all ends up being for a good thing because the pattern becomes that much better. And hopefully when it does go public, you're not getting a bunch of emails and questions about how to make something work.
Well, let's talk about you as a designer. So you posted that first float tote
Mhm.
and that was successful. And then you had to come up with the next design. Like, did you feel the pressure of coming up with the next design? Do you feel the pressure now coming up with more and more designs?
So I'm trying to remember what was next. I think I did a bunch of new designs right away. I was feeling really, really creative and at that time. I think this was still in 2018. And so I had a bunch of ideas. And the way that I kind of motivated myself to work then is I would announce something before I was ready. So I had to like work towards that deadline. I actually don't know how I was doing this because I was still working full time. And I believe I was putting out 2 YouTube videos a week. And I was designing. Right now, I haven't put out a pattern in over a year. So there's been a lot of other things going on. I did start a second YouTube channel as well, but I I would kind of put that pressure on myself and like have the idea, have it started. And then I would say like, coming on Tuesday, I'm going to be asking for test knitters and I wouldn't be done. And that would like motivate me to finish. And I felt like I worked really well that way. It did work for me. I'm trying to be a little more um, working ahead. And now I've learned a lot. But it was a lot. Like the designing patterns, I think was a lot, which is why I have taken such a long hiatus from pattern design. I actually have a lot of ideas that I'm ready to put into motion. And so I am getting a couple of things rounded out and like routine like first. And then I will finally feel ready again to have that space to be creative. I just don't think you can, when you're feeling really overwhelmed or really stressed, it's very hard to be creative, and pattern design is such a creative thing. So if you don't give yourself the time and space for that, like it's not going to feel fun.
Right.
And I want it to feel fun because it is.
Do you ever feel like you, being a designer, announcing to the world that you're a designer, do you feel like you're unsure of yourself, that you are that expert, you are the designer, and that you're bringing something new to the world? Like, do you ever have those doubts?
Yeah, I definitely did in the beginning. And I still remember like what that feels like. When people ask me about like if they want to start pattern designing or YouTube podcasting or whatever new thing it is, like the hardest step is to get over that fear and just try it and know that it's still going to be scary for like a while. I definitely felt like I don't really know how to do this. Like, I obviously didn't go to school for this. I don't think there's like a knitting pattern design school.
Right.
I don't know what the standard is for this. There are lots of resources online for like standard, like abbreviations and stuff like that. So you can research those kinds of things, but like, how do I write a pattern? How do I explain this so that everyone can understand it? So that's where I kind of took what I learned from testing other people's patterns. And I was like, okay, I like the format that this person uses. So I'm going to mimic that format for my patterns. And I really like that this person like adds in this special element. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to use that for my patterns too. And then when I first started testing my patterns, because I didn't have a large audience, it was a small group, and that felt really safe to me. I felt like they were very honest and very helpful with getting everything put into place. So float tote was my first pattern. I have recently made a float tote and had to use my pattern because I don't have them memorized.
Right.
And I was like looking at things on there and I'm like, oh, I really want to change this now. Like, oh, this pattern needs a refresh. So just know that everything you're doing is like the best. You're like putting out the best thing that you can do. And you might go back and look at it later and be like, oh, I want to make this better. And that's because you've gotten better since then. So it's okay. It's better to put something out, and you're always going to look back at it later and want to make improvements on it because you've improved. So I would
You
just say
have the same
for
feeling about your podcast. Like when you go back to that December 1st vlog, like do you ever watch it and like what do you think about yourself and how you changed and how like the whole setup changed?
yeah. Well, I actually kind of am surprised by how much I did in the beginning, like how much I was like, I knew so little. How did I figure out how to put this on to YouTube and all of that stuff? I mean, there's definitely small elements like, oh, I got better lighting and I eventually got a camera and I used my iPhone for over 2 years to film and edit. I only got a camera this year, and I didn't even start using it till like May. So I have definitely learned a lot and made a lot of improvements, but there's something really cool about looking back at those first episodes. Now I'm over 100 episodes. So looking back at the very first ones, I'm like, I had no idea what was going to happen in the next 2 years. Like that's something really special. So I never feel like it, like I said, I do want to go back and like fix some of my patterns, honestly.
Right.
But like I never feel like I did a bad job then. Like I know I did the best that I could do when I made those things. And I always try to celebrate that growth.
What's the best thing you think happened from you starting podcast?
It's the best thing that happened. I mean, I podcasting for me is probably something that's never going to go away. I'm probably going to do that forever and ever, even if other things evolve, like my secondary videos and all of the other stuff that I do. I like podcasting was really just like the gateway to YouTube for me, and that's probably the best thing that's come out of it, because now I do so many other things on YouTube, even on Knitty Natty. My podcast is there. It's every week. It's reliable. It comes out. I think I've been posting it at the same time for 2 years. And I've missed, I mean, I definitely don't post 52 a year. Like I'm not getting every single week, but probably like 45. Like it's there, it's reliable. But then it allowed me to do more creative stuff. Like now I have so much fun making these vlogs, making these informational videos, tutorial videos, and that's been huge. A lot of times those are even better received than my other ones. And for sure, if I hadn't had the podcast on Knitty Natty, I wouldn't have ventured into a second YouTube channel and been able to handle all of the different things that come with the filming and the editing and all of that stuff. So that's probably the best thing that has come from it, just like creating this whole different world on YouTube. And it's been so much fun.
Right. Are there like lots of days when you're not knitting or crocheting?
When I'm not knitting or crocheting? No. I mean, I don't do as much. Like I don't spend hours and hours every day knitting, like I probably did before I was podcasting and doing all of this stuff. But no, I knit every single day. If I don't knit, it's because I'm probably like on vacation and we're doing a lot of different things, or I'd have to be pretty sick to not knit.
When you go on vacation, like do you bring a suitcase of yarn with you?
Yes, I do. I bring way too much. I am overly optimistic all of the time on what I can get done. But I have to say, I'm really proud of myself. This last trip I went on a couple of weeks ago, I spent a week at my parents' house. And because the trip right before I brought way too much yarn, I was like, all right, I'm going to bring just what I need. And it was like one skein of yarn to knit a swatch for a sweater, and then I think like 3 sock projects. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be under yarned. Like I'm being good, but I'm going to be under yarned. And I ended up having exactly the right amount. I finished like 2 pairs of socks. I'd made my swatch. And then on the plane ride home, I was working on the last sock. I didn't even finish it. Like I still had a little extra to go, but I was really proud of myself because I didn't have too much and I had the perfect amount. So I'm going to try to do that moving forward.
Right. Well, talking about your childhood home, when did you start knitting or crochet?
Oh,
What was first?
I had learned to knit first. I was about 13 and I had seen somebody, I used to dance and do ballet. It's not that important for the story, except I was like at a ballet thing when I saw this other girl about my age, she was knitting. And I just thought that was like super interesting. And so when I went back home after this camp, I asked my grandmother like to teach me to knit. She just kind of knew the basics. So she taught me the knit and purl stitch, but not how to bind off, not how to cast on. So I kind of made that up. I think I got a book from like Michael's or something because there was no YouTube at the time. You had to learn from a book or from a person. And then a few years after that, I wanted to learn to crochet. And one of my friends actually taught me. I was 16 years old. One of my friends taught me to crochet. And around that same time, I had really gotten into knitting a lot more. And my mom had found, I guess like driving through a shopping center, she found a yarn store. And so she told me and another friend about this, like, oh, there's a yarn shop. I went in there. I think she went in there. I'm not sure. But somehow she found out they had like a knit night. And so at 16 years old, we go to this knit night and I was hooked from there. Like that's when I feel like my knitting really started, was when I was 16 years old. First time I went into a yarn shop.
So I noticed also you have like different sorts of memberships for Knitty Natty. Is that the same idea, like of the having the same sort of like community feeling and knit nights and like knit alongs and all of that? Like, was that why you started that membership program?
Yes. So the membership started in January of 2021 after like 9 months of the pandemic. And it was something that I don't actually remember if I had thought of the idea like during the pandemic. Probably so, because I didn't even know what Zoom was like before that. So I think that was it was kind of an idea I had started developing throughout 2020. And I wanted to do it, but I wasn't really sure how. Actually, first, I just wanted to do some online knitting lessons. And then I was like, you know what I really want is community. And so that started this January. And in the membership, it's grown and evolved since the beginning, but most of what we do is just community stuff. So we've got everything's online because we have people across the United States. We actually have some people in Australia, in the UK, and Canada. And so it's really cool because we can all get together in one place on the internet. But we have like just knit groups. We have some make-alongs that we do just within the membership. And then we have specific events where I'll do something special. We've done some casual things, like we just had a movie night where we all got on and watched the same movie with like a chat box, and that was really fun actually. And then I've done some interviews and some tours of different things that are just for my members. So we have a lot of fun doing that. It's really great.
It sounds fun. Um, what's your plans for this year? Like where, what's going to be in the review? Like what happened and what do you think you want to achieve till the end of the year?
Yeah, okay. So I'm definitely planning to do a year in review at the end of 2021. It's going to be an interesting year. The pandemic has affected everybody, I think. And for me in 2020, it was a positive thing. And I know that's really hard to say, that feels really weird to say, because I know it was not positive for most people, but it allowed me to like work at home. I was still doing my teaching job, but I was able to do all of the stuff with Knitty Natty. I was able to start a new YouTube channel. I was doing really good with my schedule. I was getting up early every day and getting so much stuff done, and it was great. And then you would think it would get better. And then this year has been like a super challenge for me. We've had a lot of changes. I quit my full-time job. We moved from Texas to New York City. It's been positive things. It's been very stressful and overwhelming. So I think you're going to see that reflected in my knitting because I don't have quite as much knitting as I usually do. I have a lot of socks. I have knit an insane amount of socks this year. And then I have knit some sweaters. I'm really into sweaters right now. Like that's my new kick. So I think it's fun, like, you know, for everyone to look back on your projects and see like, what am I making? What story does that tell? What was going on in my life at that time? I haven't knit a single shawl this year.
Interesting.
Because I have, jokingly, I have like stress from from the Stephen West shawl from last year. It's actually still sitting over there looking at me because that's got a hole
Accusingly.
in it. But yeah, I think that's what you're going to see. And I'm probably going to talk a lot about just besides my knitting and crochet projects, like growth in YouTube, in Instagram, in life, because all of that interrelates to knitting. So that's probably my prediction.
Well, I'll ask you one last question. What happens to everything you knit? Do you wear it all? Do you gift it all? Like, what happens to the majority of your items?
I'm a pretty selfish knitter. And I don't think it's selfish at all to knit for yourself, but you could categorize it that way. But I make most things for myself. So I've been knitting a lot of sweaters for myself lately, knitting a lot of socks. I do make socks for my mom, my brother, and my mother-in-law every year for Christmas because they really like them. I'm planning to make a few more things for my husband this year. So, but those are really the only people that get my knits. I don't really make things just to make them or like for baby showers or stuff like that very often. I do try to wear my knits, but if I'm not wearing them, I get rid of them, just like clothes. I hung on to a lot of my knits and I was like, why am I keeping this? Like I made this maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It's no longer a style I like. It's no longer a color I like. And just like a clothing item that I bought at the store, like I would be okay to let that go. And so that's what I kind of had to realize about my knits. It's like, I'm not going to keep them as trophies. I knitted them, I have pictures of them, and I loved them for a while. But now if I'm not enjoying them anymore, it's okay for them to go. And I know that will probably make people's heart race too, but it's okay. You can let go of stuff. And I do have a lot. So I've got, I think you might be able to see it on camera. There's a giant drawer under our bed. And that's where all of my finished knits are. I think they all fit in there. There might be a couple in the closest drawer, but that's kind of those are my parameters. Things need to fit in there.
Is there like one single project that you know that you will never give to anyone or get rid of?
Yeah, that's actually, yes. I have a shawl that I knit for my wedding. And it's a lace weight lace shawl with beads on it. In our old house, I had it hung up in my yarn room, but because in this apartment, we only have a 1 bedroom, it is safely in storage. But that's something that I will never get rid of.
Well, thank you so very much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed our chat and getting to know you a little bit better.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
Thank you.